Welcome to Code Engineering. Today we're going to have a tutorials about how to have multiple packages under a single workspace in IntelliJ. So basically, physically, what it will look like is something like this. So we have a single workspace. In this case, I have a dummy one called Java Best Practice Workspace, and underneath it, we will have two modules into it. Okay, so these are the Surface A and the Model A. So basically, this is what we're going to create, and then we will get to know how to set up the Maven part so that the Surface A can recognize the Model A and so forth. Okay. And of course, in doing this, before we get into the practice, let's understand our motivation, why we would want to do this at all. So the motivations is there are three benefits into it. First, it's actually help to organize your system. So if you created a system, you will want to make it into different Java projects, right? It will be under different repository, Git repository. So for example, in this example case, you will want the Surface A and the Model A actually are hosted in different Git repository. That's one way to actually organize your system. Why would you want to organize it like that? For example, if you are a service and you have multiple different services actually communicating with each other, which is a normal case in most of companies, especially the bigger you are, definitely you want to organize it into different services, especially if they are hosted by different team. So in that case, you will want to share your model, the model that your service has, to the other service that may consume you, right? So it owns by you. For example, the model A define the interfaces that the service A is actually doing. So the service A is more like the implementations. The model A will be like the interface. And then you will share this model A to another service, like for example, service B, which will call your service A. That's an example. Then in that case, of course, you need to have a different Java package for the model itself because you don't want to share your implementation to them. You just want to share your model A. And that also will make the compilation size of the service be smaller because they won't have all of yours. Smaller compilation means faster builds and so forth. So that's the biggest motivations of this. And let's see another one. So I actually mentioned it. It's pretty related with the number one, where you want to share packages between services. And for example, in my case, some of my example real use case is actually when I'm creating a proto buff model. So I'm creating a service which is having proto buff as its protocol. Then I'm creating this defining all my service interfaces in terms of the proto models, and then these proto models I put it into a different package, and then I share this to for the other services who want to communicate with the service I created. Finally, the benefit is to actually you can use this to customize your code implementation locally. For example, so we know that we get the benefit, and actually we cannot avoid it to organize things into multiple packages if we want to tidy things up, right? But then there are cases where you need to make changes across multiple packages. And of course, when you have your own companies, for example, or you work in a companies, usually they have their own Maven centralized project. Or even if you do your personal, probably you just publish it publicly, right? But if you only relies on the Maven from the externals, then you cannot imagine how you want to modify it. It will be troublesome, right? You don't want, you sometimes you want to do an integration test where you want to change everything and then test it all before you push your changes, right? Rather than making it, trying to make it one by one, and then turns out you make a small mistake here when you found out after you do the integration testings, and then you have to create another pull request for that things that you already committed. So when you need to make that multiple changes, you would want to pull all your packages into the modules under the workspace, under the same workspace. And then what happened then, your Maven will actually look at whatever is in your local workspace rather than the one from the remote Maven. And that helps you so that you can make the changes. For example, once we have our own Maven repository and we publish it there, or we publish it to the public Maven repository, then actually you don't need the model A here. You can just have the service A, and the service A will get the model A from Maven. But if you want to make changes to the model too, and then make changes to implementation, then you want to pull the model A locally and then make both changes in the model A and the service A, test it, then publish it. Okay, so those are the motivation, and these are a normal workflow you will always meet. At least in my experience as a software engineer, I meet it in both small and big companies. For example, currently I'm working in one of the biggest e-commerce in US, Canada, uh, and that's about it. We do that kind of things, right? We we pull things into our local workspace and then make our changes across the things, integration change, show up what we have tested, and so forth. Now, after we all talk about the motivations, all right, let's start with what you call it. Let's start with the implementations. Now, maybe the best way to do this is if I just try to create it from the start. Let's call this Java uh, tutorial workspace. Okay, Java Maven create. Let's do a new window. So this is our workspace. Normally this workspace would not be Git repository, so this is just something that is locally used. That's what usually happen for me, at least that's my workflow. Then let's say we want to have two things the same. So what happened here is we will add module. We call the first one the model A, create it, and another one is the service A, create another module called the service A. Okay, now that we have it, we IntelliJ will automatically register all those modules underneath it here. That's how everything is connected. So imagine it that the workspace, the initial project workspace we created, is actually like a shell to to tell the modules, the children modules of it, that hey, locally there is this model A, that is this surface A. So that's how it can communicate with each other. Okay. Now for the model A, let's identify this into a more rigorous identification so that easier to it's more accurate to be pointing to. So let's introduce some group ID and also some version. Let's just simply do this. Okay, that's for the model, and for the surface let's just do the same thing. Now for the parent itself, of course, because normally in how I work, I don't really use the local workspace as the main parent. The main parent is the real parent that we want our service Maven is actually to be what you call that, inheriting from, right? So for example, if we are creating a spring, then we will need to change that parent into whatever spring basic starter parent that we want to have. For example, in this case, I'm using version 2.7.2. So I just need to copy this and then change this one, okay, into that one. Yes, for simplicity, I will also change this one into spring. You don't really need to actually, but because I just want to use Lombok under this spring, so the Lombok is something that most people used actually to simplify several basic things you do in Java. So Java is a very old language, so most of it was originally like two verbose. So that's why there are these kind of things like Lombok, which actually helps in simplifying the way we type things in Java. This is very ubiquitous one. And of course, usually it's only in the compile process, it's not in the runtime. And then let's minimize this because we don't use that. Model A, Java tutorial workspace, yeah, this one. Then the dependency for the model. For the model itself, let's just create a simple hello message class as the model. So example, model A, hello message. And don't forget that we need to sync our Maven so that we got the Lombok recognized by the ID. Once it's done, let's start it. We basically just will have just a string called message here, and then we will have the all argument constructor from Lombok and some getter. That's it. What happened here, if you don't know about Lombok, it will create some get functions, and this will create the basic all argument constructor without you having to type it. So you just need to annotate it. This is called annotation. And we are finished for the model. Now for the surface. The surface itself, we're going to create just some basic REST controllers, REST API out of this, okay? So what we need to do here is just let's create the application com example service A service application, okay, and then let's look at it. What was not the test. Java service application. Let's just copy paste this. So basically this is how we can start a Spring Boot application. Now the thing is, I believe we haven't synced it. It's already synced. Now it's about the dependencies. We need to get in the Spring Web. That will be this one. So there you go. Sync it up. After it being synced up, we should be able to get ID helps about this annotation. It's still importing Maven project here. Now it's done. See, we got all these helpers coming in. There you go. Now it's already become a Spring application. But why it's still showing red? Rename refer. Oh, something's wrong here. It should be Spring application, I believe. Let's look at this. Yeah. Okay. Now it's going good. Then we will need the controller. Java class. Let's put it under sub package controller. Hello controller. Okay. So it will be a REST controller. And we can have the get mapping. Let's say hello. Let's just copy it. It's basically just a simple thing. Okay, it needs the forward slash. Then we can just have the public. And this is where we use the stuff from the model. But of course, we haven't yet imported it into our Maven. This is the main things that actually we want to talk about in this video. So we want to introduce the things from the model A. That's why we need all of these things. We just need to copy paste this one. Then we'll go to this POM XML and replace this. Save it, sync it up. It's in process. Now it's done. If we go back to the controller, now we'll see it. See, from the model A, we already connected the service A to the model A. Now we'll use it and then we'll build the message. Hi. Okay, so that's about it. Now let's test it out. Let's see that this is really being connected and can be built into service. So we just go to the application and then run our Spring Boot. So Lombok, in IntelliJ you need to enable the annotation processings. Then it's being built. We'll wait for a while. So while waiting, let's recap how everything is being connected. Basically, we have the parent workspace, which has its Maven introducing what modules are being hosted under that workspace. So what it means is use this local module if it exists locally. Otherwise, try to search it into the remote repository. Then We just need to do as per usual what the Maven project is, and to connect it, for example, service A depends on the model A. We will need to put it under the dependency part, put in the artifact ID, group ID, and version. And that's about it. Now it's already up and running. We can see it's running at port 8080, and because this is just a simple hello things, we can just use our browser. Okay, so let's do localhost 8080 hello. There you go. It responded with a JSON message hi. Message is, if you remember, that's the private string variables in the hello message in the model A. And that's about it. That's how one can organize multiple projects and then make those changes in the multiple project locally. So use your workspace, use the module definitions in the Maven, and then that's about it. And now let's be real, because of course when we are making project, just to complete these things, we want to know what are being Git repository, which are not. Of course, every people and every company has their different way to do stuff, but this is my way, okay? Usually, the one that I get will only be these things: the Model A, the Surface A. The Java tutorial workspace, that won't exist at all in my repository. This is just my local workspace. I just use it to connect it locally, to say, hey, override this locally if you meet it locally. But no, I won't register this workspace at all in the in my remote repository. Why? Because this is case by case basis. This is per project basis. I don't always need model A in my workspace. Why? Because if I just pull everything in my workspace, it will just be too heavy. It will just slow down my computer. As you can see, my computer is not the fastest. I need to buy a new one. uh, I'll save up. But that's basically it. So what I will do for the one that I will get will only be two out of these three existing things, existing Maven project. That won't be this Java tutorial. It would be the model A. So I will git init this. There you go. This is one repository. And another thing that I will also put in repository will be the service A. That's about it. And I believe that's complete our tutorial on how to have multiple projects under a single workspace in IntelliJ and Maven. Thank you for watching. Hopefully it's useful. If it is so, please like and subscribe. Thank you.